Hey there, how you doing, my dear students? I hope that you did have a really good vacations time. Unfortunately, that's over for both of us, and that kind of sucks. Well, I'm going to try it shorter the videos, and this time we are going to talk about Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Uh, And remember that we're talking about political philosophy, and our main questions our main question is why society and why a political society, okay? And we saw with Thomas Hobbes the state of nature. I know that this is kind of new. I have a reflection on my marker board. So well, you can take the screenshot, but the reflection that you can see here in this part it is written a state of nature. So yeah, why political philosophy, and this is state of nature, okay? So a state of nature was or is like an kind of an answer or kind of a not a method. It's like an assumption or a supposition of our thinkers, first Thomas Hobbes and secondly Rousseau, trying to answer this question, trying to answer why political society. One question that you could make to Thomas Hobbes as a young philosopher, it could be, hey Thomas Hobbes, but there is actually, or there was actually once a state of nature. How can you suppose that we actually had a state of nature? Okay, that is a really good question, and the thing is that we are trying to go back to the origin, toward the origin with this presupposition of the state of nature. Okay, so both philosophers, Hobbes and Rousseau, talk about the state of nature, and with that idea they are trying to explain what does human nature consist of. Remember that human nature for Thomas Hobbes was, and I put that into a quotation marks, to be bad, bad. For Rousseau, it's going to be the opposite. The human being is good by nature, but I'm putting this into quotation marks because we, as you remember, we cannot say or if in this stage of the state of nature we don't have morals, how could we possibly say something about what is good or what is bad? So I think the more consistent interpretation of Rousseau would be, or is to say that human nature consists in freedom. We are free by nature, okay, and that is going to be the main purpose on this Rousseauian way to conceive the social contract, okay. So if we are good by nature, why do we need to live in society, But the fact is that we live in society. For Rousseau, society corrupts man, okay? Society is like the source of evilness, in that way. The source of the corruption of the souls, to say in some way, the corruption of morals, okay? So we have two types, in this sense and in this way to explain it, we have two types of inequality, okay? The first one is the physical inequality that is you could imagine with, I don't know, when someone is stronger than anyone else, I don't know. You can imagine that immediately, right? The second one is a moral inequality, and this moral inequality, as I said, is the source of the evilness, wickedness, all the I don't know, all the bad things that you can imagine. And that moral inequality needs a new order, and that new order is going to be with this, with the social contract, okay? So what is the difference with this social contract with the sovereign perspective of Thomas Hobbes? We're going to see that in a few minutes, in a few ways. Um, what is the thing? We need to preserve this idea. Man, human being, is free by nature, okay? We need, and that is the purpose of the social contract. So if we actually uh, born with this freedom, uh, we need to make a deal to preserve that freedom, okay? Uh, that that liberty, that freedom, is going to be, or is going to be composed by a general will, okay? This general will is so important because is going to make a place for this term, the populace or the people. Populace in Spanish will be like el populacho. I don't like that translation. Uh, and to say people, as you can see here, uh, is kind of is not good enough. It's not a good translation. In Spanish is as simple as el pueblo, okay, and the people or the populace is a Rousseauian term so important that it's going to have influences with Hegel and all the romanticism that actually Rousseau had a lot of influence in Kant, and is going to be like the I think, in my opinion, that Kant is the pinnacle of the Enlightenment movement, and Rousseau is going to have well, the correct word is Enlightenment. No, I think I said illustration, but erase that. But yeah, Rousseau had a lot of influence in Kant, and Hegel is going to take this concept of populace, of people, to his philosophy, okay? But trying to think of this term, people or populace, pueblo, in a really simple way, you know? The Mexican populace, the Mexican people, uh, are really, you know, we are really afraid about violence. We are really afraid about all the people that we don't know where are they, all that women that were killed. You know, we have a wound, in our Mexican being. If you think in that way, you are thinking about in a people way, in a populous way, like in an identity. Okay, so that identification, that identity is going to make a general will, or is like the source of the general will, and the general will, or the instrument of the general will of the social contract that actually to say that the social contract, the main purpose of the social contract is to preserve the human freedom, is the same or is equal to say that social contract must preserve the general will. And the general will is going to make a sovereign, but the difference between Hobbes and Rousseau is that the sovereign, for example, for Thomas Hobbes, the sovereign is one people, okay? Is only one figure. You need to remember that. For Rousseau, Rousseau is talking about in a formal way of think politics, but is kind of, you can say that Rousseau is talking about democracy, okay? So in this sense, the sovereign is different to say the sovereign and the subjects understood as súbditos, is different to say the sovereign and the subjects than the sovereign and the general will. Okay, the sovereign is going to accomplish the general will of the people. Okay, and the thing is that you need to be free in this schema. Okay, and if you don't want to be part of the social contract, you are going to be forced to be part of it. In other words, you are going to be forced to be free. And think about that phrase, okay, because it's so important in this Rousseauian way, or the Rousseauian philosophy, okay? So, you are a person, or you are recognized as a person if you belong to the social contract, okay? In other words, what makes you human, or what makes you free, is the social contract. As soon as you get into a social contract, you are human. Okay, that is so important, and keep this in mind, because it doesn't mean that the sovereign is ended with this new schema. No, these are new ways to conceive power. Okay, to conceive how political society works. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so as I said, to be human is equal to be free, and the free will, it has like two levels. Okay, the natural liberty, that is actually the liberty or the individual's power, and the civil liberty, that is according to the general will. So when we are trying to make an agreement, this is the thing that I say that is a capital one. You are going to be forced to be free, but in the general will, you can make so many groups. I don't know. For example, think about that. We are talking about education. And the people that think that education must be free, and the people who don't. So we can have a lot of ideas. But if one idea is like the most powerful one, and that idea is like the unique idea, I don't know how to say it, think that unique idea is going to be like something quite similar to the sovereign, as Thomas Hobbes understood. Okay, in other words, this general will is always an agreement, okay? An agreement that is not always that clear, but this general will implicates the distinction, the multiple versions of what is good, okay? If the sovereign in the Hobbesian way was the one who say what is moral, what is good, or what is bad, in this new schema, what is good or what is bad, is going to have its origin here in the general will, okay? Not in the sovereign. The sovereign is going to accomplish the general will, but as I said, it's a different relation, it's a quite deeper movement of conceiving power, okay, and conceiving the organization or the political organization. So you need to have clear, or you have to think about the differences between the sovereign understood with the Hobbesian way, and the sovereign understood by the Rousseauian way, okay? And I think that's all, and if you have any doubt, you can ask me anything, and well, goodbye.